Today, I will explain why you should invest in David's Tea expanding into the UK and how the expansion will be viable. David's Tea is a specialty tea company that was founded in Toronto in 2008. Currently, it operates over 230 stores in Canada and the United States. I believe that we are large enough as a business to expand overseas. Expansion into the United Kingdom is only the next logical step, and I will explain why. Well, why should we invest in the United Kingdom? First, we can gain a lot from it and its market. These are a few of the reasons. The UK has a very large market for tea. British people drink more than 6 billion cups a year. Clearly, there is a very large demand for tea, and we can take advantage of that. The UK's economy is also very strong and stable, as we will discuss later. This means that consumers will be more confident in buying products. Expanding into the UK is also great for further expansion into Europe, due to its politics and geography. We also have our own competitive advantages that will help us be viable once we are in the UK. We have a distinct brand that will attract certain market segments, and especially the youth. This has many advantages, which we will get to later. Our tea products are also high quality, which can be appealing for consumers. For example, we use high quality ingredients, and we can have your tea at the best temperature. Finally, our tea can be made in store, which is much more akin to British culture, as British people usually have tea in the store. This can prevent customers from feeling foreign or alienated in our stores. However, there are several challenges the UK is facing, but we can still succeed with those. So I just want to provide an anecdote. A few years ago, I took a trip to London for a few days. When I was there, I noticed that very peculiarly, the British had, as part of their culture, they had specific times for tea, one at 11 and then one in the afternoon. This routine just shows how important tea is for them, I guess. Also, I notice a lot of people tend to drink their tea in cafes as opposed to just buying and leaving like in Canada or America. Most of these shops were more conventional stores. This is why I think our business can have success there, as there have not been many stores like us, which are more creative and bright to a degree. Now I will discuss some general information about the United Kingdom. Hopefully, this will persuade you about the benefits of investing in this venture and the advantages the UK provides us. First, geography. The UK is located on the British Isles in Western Europe. This can be helpful as the UK is located very closely to nearby powerful economies such as Germany and France. The UK uses Greenwich Mean Time, which is 5 hours ahead of our Eastern Standard Time. This can impact our business and this can hurt communication because of the large time difference. However, it is not nearly as bad as many other places in the world face, and many other businesses have passed this obstacle. Also, it is not a hard problem to fix. We just need to adjust our schedule accordingly from then on. The climate in the UK is very wet, very temperate, and there's various terrains. So as you can see from the map, in the north and the west there are a lot of mountains. And then in the southeast, which is where most of the population is, that's more flat. The current population of the UK is 65,105,246, with 8,869,898 of those living in just London. London is the economic and political capital and hub, really, of the UK. I think a lot of our business will be done there. The recent population growth has not been very high. It is just 0.51%. However, this should not be a big problem in the UK in the short term. As shown on the second picture, the population of the UK is still forecasted to grow quite substantially. Also, the population already is very large, therefore you don't need to worry about the lack of workers. The median age is 40.5 years. On top of the slide is a breakdown of the age groups into a percent of the population. Clearly, there are a lot of young workers and working adults. This is a slide on the different measurements for diversity. While the UK is not the most diverse country in the world, it still has a fair share. In fact, the UK is a popular destination for immigrants and refugees. This can help in several ways. One, immigrants often try to work harder for less, which can help improve the efficiency of our work while also saving on our bottom line. Also, workers from diverse backgrounds often can improve the innovation in our company, for example, by creating a new idea for a tea. And I also want to mention the fact that tea is not a very hard job, but you do not need specific educational requirements, so a lot of immigrants can fill that position as well. The UK's communication system is very well developed. It has a sophisticated telephone and broadcasting network. This is very similar to Canada. The UK uses buried cables, microwave radio relays, and fiber optic networks. The UK has 33,140,662 total fixed telephone lines, which is the seventh highest in the world, and 79,173,658 mobile cellular subscriptions, which is the 20th highest in the world. Clearly, the telephone network is very popular and modern, which can help us communicate when we expand there. About 94.8% of the population uses the internet. This shows how developed the UK is, as so many people have access to the internet. In terms of broadcasting, there's one major network called the BBC, or British Broadcasting Company. It is in fact the world's oldest and largest broadcasting network. So I believe overall, this clearly shows the UK is very well connected, which means any business communications will not be hindered there. The UK also has a very well-developed transportation network. They have 16,347 kilometers of railroads as of 2015, which is the 16th highest in the world. They use the 1.435 meter gauge, which is standard in Europe. This can be helpful for us since it means we do not have to worry about changing the gauges on trains a lot if we expand by rail into Europe. Changing gauges can be quite costly and time-consuming. There's 394,428 kilometers of paved roadways as of 2009. However, I believe the greatest strength of the transportation network is the waterways. The UK has 3,200 kilometers of waterways, but they are very efficient. The UK is a small country, so you do not need a lot of waterways to cover most of the land. For reference, look at the map at the bottom. Those lines represent all the waterways, and you can clearly see how concentrated they are. This can help lower costs for transportation, as water is typically a cheaper method of transportation than, say, plane. The UK also has 460 airports, which is a lot too. So I will now discuss the government in the UK. So the government in the UK and the government in Canada are quite different. In the UK, the Queen plays a large role in the government. However, there are many similarities between the governments in Canada and the UK. The head of state in both Canada and the UK is Queen Elizabeth. In the UK, the ruling party is currently the Conservative Party, which is a right-wing party. Compare this to Canada, which is currently led by the Liberal Party. The head of government in the UK right now is Prime Minister Theresa May. However, she is due to resign and leave her office on June 7, 2019, and it is unknown who her replacement will be. However, corruption is the 8th lowest in the world, which is a positive. I believe that the greatest problem facing the UK right now, and the greatest challenge we will have to confront if we expand into the UK, is Brexit. Brexit refers to the UK's exit from the European Union. In 2016, there's a referendum in the UK and the people voted to leave. This is yet to go into effect. In fact, Brexit has been delayed several times. Overall, you can imagine there will be many social, political, and economic effects because of Brexit, as the UK has been part of the EU for decades. This can make the UK very politically unstable at the moment. After all, Theresa May just left because of Brexit. However, there are many good things. Or there are some good things. The UK does not want to leave without a deal, which can help prevent many of the negative consequences. There is also the possibility that Brexit is cancelled altogether. What I'm just trying to say is that although this is a large problem, the UK government will more than likely find a way to find a solution to it. Also, Brexit doesn't affect our expansion into the UK directly, as there will be no direct consequences for us. For example, we are not getting any new tariffs or anything like that. So this isn't the biggest worry for us necessarily. I will now discuss the economy in the UK. The UK's economy is a free market one, which is similar to other Western nations. In a free market economy, it is the private firms and individuals who make most of the key economic decisions, such as what goods and products are made and at what price they should be set at. Also, in a free market economy, the government has a very limited role in the economy. The UK also has a clearly developed economy, especially in the financial sector. Its GDP per capita is $75,628.68 in Canadian dollars, which is 44,300 pounds. The GDP real growth rate is 1.7%, and the country's currency, like I just mentioned, was the pound sterling. Overall, this shows that even with Brexit, the UK's economy is still very, very strong, and a lot of people still have confidence in it. So that's one of the benefits. The UK's labor force contains 33,500,000 workers, which is the 17th highest in the world. 88.5% of the labor force work in services, which is the tertiary sector. 15.2% work in industry, and only 1.3% work in agriculture. This is very typical of a developed country, as most workers in a developed country work in services. The unemployment rate is 4.4%, which is not bad. About 6.23 million workers are trade union members, which means that the unionization rate is 23.2%. Trade unions can actually hurt our expansion, as they will usually demand that workers receive better wages and benefits, and that can be quite costly. Because of the lower unionization rate, we do not have to worry too much about that problem. The UK contains a few natural resources, most notably coal, natural gas, oil, and livestock. These resources have both benefits and negative effects. For example, coal is mainly used for fuel in trains, which can help transport things. And coal is also used for power generation and coal power plants. However, coal produces greenhouse gases when burned, which can contribute to global warming and other environmental damage. The UK is trying to address this issue, and the levels of greenhouse gases are going down, which is good for the environment. The UK is very internationally involved and is part of many international agreements. First, it is a member of the World Trade Organization and International Monetary Fund, which are both very important economic organizations. Most countries in the world are part of these. They are also currently part of the EU. Although there is Brexit, that is yet to occur. Being in the EU has many advantages. For example, it means the UK is included in the 40 trade agreements the EU has with many other countries. Also, the UK can participate in the single market, which is basically where Europe becomes more mobile and less restrictive with immigration and trade in the EU. This will help our company if we expand there. The UK does have some independent trade agreements, such as with Switzerland, Chile, the Faroe Islands, and Eastern and Southern Africa. So the UK is not completely dependent on the EU economically or internationally. So I want to finish the section by going over most of the UK's competitive advantages and why you should invest in this. First, as I've noted several times, the UK has a strong and stable economy. This means consumers are likelier to spend money on our business, and it means it's easier to expand. The UK also has a large market for tea, drinking 6 billion cups a year. Obviously, as we sell tea, it is helpful for us. Expanding into the UK also gives us greater access to the rest of the European market if we wish to expand further. First, the UK is located very close to mainland Europe, so it would be logistically easier to expand. Also, as the UK has privileges as a member of the EU, our business can take advantage of that, such as with the single market. The UK has had a historically close relationship with Canada, as we used to be part of the British Empire. This is why I believe that as a Canadian business, it would be easier for us to enter the market. The UK has an efficient infrastructure, such as with the efficient waterways and the many kilometers of roads and railways. This can help reduce transportation costs and make logistics easier. Finally, the diverse population can help our business succeed in many ways, such as by bringing innovation. However, there are still many challenges in the UK. Brexit is the most important, but like I mentioned, it will turn out better than what most people expect, since they will negotiate a deal or cancel the entire thing. Environmental damage also is a challenge the UK faces. However, it has little to do with us, as we are not using the UK's environment in any way. Also, there has been significant improvement in that respect to the environment, as the government is addressing the issue. And finally, because of the large demand for tea, there are many suppliers, which means there's a lot of competition. The market is just oversaturated with so many suppliers. However, I have a solution. We can differentiate ourselves, and we already are very different from many other tea companies, so that we stand out and consumers will come to us. I will now talk about how to best market our company later on. First, business culture. So I'll discuss the general business culture in the UK. So generally, people are expected to act very formal and unemotional as part of British culture. Business people are meant to focus on objective facts rather than feelings. This is, as opposed to many other countries, such as in the US, where emotions are used a lot more in business. In the UK, there's also a concept known as the British Reserve, which refers to how British people are quieter and more reserved. All of this applies to how business is done. English is the predominant language in the UK. Some businesses might know foreign languages, but expect that most businesses will not. And as we speak English, this is not a big deal or a big problem for us. In fact, it's not a problem at all. It might even help us. In terms of what British people say, they tend to understate things. And finally, they have a formal body language, especially in business. So for example, no slouching. This all reflects on the formality that I mentioned earlier. When greeting someone, a handshake is usually expected. In some countries like France, people kiss and hug to greet each other, but not for business in the UK. It is too informal. Business cards can be given out, but it's not a requirement. And it's also best to use professional names, such as those beginning with Mr. and Mrs. Small talk is usually encouraged, such as about a discussion on weather or recent events. Again, dress in a formal and conservative manner. Dark colors are usually worn. Mostly traditional outfits are worn, like suits, skirts, or blouses. In terms of gift giving, it's not very common. However, if it is done, it is expected that you return the favor with a small gift. Large gifts can be seen as bribes, so don't give large gifts. And in the UK, punctuality is very important. Time is a very valuable resource for many people, especially for business people. It is advised that if you know you will be late for a meeting, cancel it to save time for everyone else. So to review, how should we do business in the UK? Well, remember, formality is very important. Remember to be unemotional, shake hands, speak and act professionally, dress appropriately, and to be punctual. And with those, you are likely to succeed. I will now evaluate the viability of the company in the UK and how we should change our marketing to ensure the highest chance of success when investing there. Following these considerations will help our company maximize its viability in the UK. First, I will discuss our product and our brand. We sell over 100 types of tea, as you can see from the picture. This can be helpful because it means that there are a lot of options. However, it could also dissuade some other tea drinkers from buying from us. The majority of tea drunk in the UK is traditional types of tea, like green or black tea. While we do offer those, I feel like because our business is so much more different because we offer so many types of tea, it could alienate some consumers and reduce the business that's done. We can also consider adding a slogan, as we do not currently have one. A slogan would make the brand a little bit more recognizable and could bring attention to us. And finally, you can add customizations to the tea. For example, we don't offer accessories like honey or sugar to the tea, which is what a lot of people use. So in order to appeal to a wider market, we should add those popular customizations. Now, although the problem with the varieties of tea is there, I feel like we should keep those varieties because there are certain benefits to that variety, and that is mostly its appeal to young people. Like I mentioned earlier, our tea market is really young. It's really teens and young adults. This is really because they would be more open to our business. When I went to a David's Tea here in Toronto, I noticed that the vast majority of consumers are young people. I think it's because one, the company and the business is more experimental, and they make many different types of tea. And as a stereotype, teenagers and sort of young adults, they're more experimental as well, and they would be more open to trying exotic varieties of tea, which is what we sell. Our branding and our logo also appeals to a young market because of its bright colors like the turquoise and our modern take on a tea store. Older generations simply will not like our business as much as the youth. And you can see I tailored this presentation to fit the turquoise color of the logo and the brand. So initially, we will sell through retailers and wholesalers because this is cheaper than selling directly. And considering how expansion is already so expensive, this will help us reduce costs, at least initially. It will also allow our products to have a wide reach in the UK, as it will reach many different stores like grocery stores and convenience stores. After we have settled down, we will eventually sell directly to consumers both through our own stores and online. First, in British culture, people are accustomed to buying from real stores, so this can reduce, having our own stores will reduce the cultural barrier there. By selling online, we are also appealing to the youth because a lot of youth nowadays are buying online. We should also make a branch plant to help make things more organized in the UK, to make it more logistically simple, and for things like storage. We should also acquire a small and local tea business, since this can help convince consumers to shop from us, as they are accustomed to the local business, and it shows how we're sort of supporting them in a way. And finally, we should make our stores more like actual cafes, because that is what is popular in the UK, and that is part of British culture, like I mentioned, with the fact that people usually drink their tea in stores. We will use a penetration strategy. First, tea is already really cheap, so setting a high price would not be a good decision, as the competition will sell for lower and people will not buy from us. Also, tea is not very expensive to make, so a low price would be financially feasible. Currently, we sell tea for 50 grams for $9 Canadian. I will now talk about the costs that we will incur from our expansion. Many of the costs are actually quite low. So for example, because our company appeals to the youth, a lot of our workers will be very young. Young workers actually have the lowest minimum wage in the UK, and they don't expect a high wage either, so this can help reduce employee expenses. Also, because of the efficient infrastructure, transportation costs are not going to be expensive at all. However, we will have high capital costs from equipment and buildings and things like that. However, we can still acquire a loan from a bank in the UK. Remember that the financial sector in the UK is very strong. We will also have cheap overhead costs, which is a benefit, as the production of tea is not very expensive. So overall, I think that it is very financially feasible. It is financially viable for us to expand into the UK at a later time. In order for us to be successful, we will also need to reach out and communicate with consumers. Most importantly, we will need an internet and social media presence. Like I noted earlier, most of the youth love using the internet and social media. So an effective way to grab their attention will be through online and social media marketing campaigns. This can help us develop a positive relationship with our target market. We can also use sales promotions like contests or sweepstakes or sales, which, since everyone likes rewards. We should also use surveys so that consumers can rate their experience. This will help build customer loyalty as they will see that we actually do care about how we treat our customers and how we want to improve. Now, there is some competition in the UK, like I mentioned earlier. These are some of the major companies, so Yorkshire Tea, Twinings, and PG Tips. However, with the marketing strategy I just went over in this section, we can differentiate ourselves and outcompete these businesses. We have that distinct brand that makes us almost like a more relatable and a more fun company, which can appeal to a young target market. Our products are also very high quality, like I mentioned earlier, and they can be made in store, which is what is usually done in the UK, and this will all help us remain viable in the venture and how we can outcompete our competition. So, in conclusion, you should invest in David's Tea expanding into the UK as it is a very viable venture. And this is a works cited list. It is every source I reference. Thank you for listening.